Greg, the question many people were asking on Thursday was which Joe Biden would show up to last night's debate with Donald Trump. Well, we now know the answer. A weak voice, stumbling president pretty much sealed his own fate with a lackluster performance in Atlanta. Now the Democratic Party is reportedly scrambling to find a replacement to be their 2024 presidential nominee. But perhaps most shocking was a comment from CNN's Erin Burnett when she seemed to indicate Joe Biden bombed the debate despite knowing all the questions beforehand. Take a listen to this.
He goes through 6 days of preparation at Camp David.
More than that.
And they know the rules.
It was more than a week.
Okay, so more than a week. They know the rules. He practices with the mics. He knows every one of these questions is coming. And yet he couldn't fill the time. Now, I just want to, let's see what the White House is saying. Sources close to the White House are saying he had a cold, wasn't feeling well. I mean, as you would expect, that came out early on in the debate. But what accounts for someone with so much experience doing so much preparation and this being the outcome?
Honestly, I think the question answers itself. He wasn't capable of doing any better than he did.
Now, Burnett seems to have some explaining to do, unless she just meant that Joe Biden should have known questions like that were coming. As for the content of the debate and the performance of each candidate, here is one of Joe Biden's unintelligible moments.
The total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country. All he had to do was leave it. All he had to do is leave it.
And here is Donald Trump's clear and cohesive answer when asked about his cognitive abilities.
Well, I took 2 tests, cognitive tests. I aced them, both of them, as you know. We made it public. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one, a real easy one. Like go through the first 5 questions. He couldn't do it. But I took 2 cognitive tests. I took physical exams every year. And, you know, we knock on wood wherever we may have wood, that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way, and I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards.
In a flash poll after the face-off, 67% told CNN that Donald Trump won that debate. Just 33% thought Joe Biden came out on top. Fewer.
As for fact-checking the candidates' answers, listen as CNN takes Joe Biden to task.
He said he's the only president in a while who didn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world. Troops have, of course, died on his watch. He said he's put in a $15 per shot cap on insulin and Medicare. It's a $35 a month cap. He said it's a $200 cap on overall drug spending in Medicare. It's $2,000 a year. He said the border now has fewer crossings than when Trump was in office. That's generally not true. He said, or at least strongly suggested, unemployment was at 15%. When he took office. It was actually 6.4. He said Trump wants to get rid of Social Security. Trump doesn't.
Surprisingly, CNN also called out the president for saying Border Patrol agents endorsed his bid for re-election, which is not true. Even MSNBC took the opportunity to be very straightforward in its assessment of Joe Biden's performance.
I think there will be stories of a lot of concern about the performance tonight. And I think when you
say conversations happening, what do you mean?
I think people are talking. I think the conversations range from whether he should be in this race tomorrow morning to what was wrong with him.
But if Biden did have a cold, why did no one from his campaign mention it in the days leading up to the debate? Here is a former Meet the Press host, Chuck Todd's reaction to the Trump-Biden rematch.
I've been talking to a lot of leaders in the Democratic Party, electeds, coalition leaders. There's a full-on panic about this performance. Not like, oh, this is recoverable. It is more of a, okay, he's got to step aside. There's a lot of that chatter.
Todd went on to say this is about as bad as performance Biden could have delivered. Finally, listen to NBC's Kristen Welker.
One Democratic lawmaker, Tom, going so far as to say this race is effectively over.
As for Joe Biden's own assessment of how he did, the president said he thought he did pretty well.
All right, let's talk about the Supreme Court for a second before we get into the debate. The Supreme Court ruled this morning in favor of a participant in the January 6th protest at the Capitol who was challenging his conviction for a federal obstruction crime. It reverses a lower court decision, returns the case to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. So is this good news for the 300 people charged with obstruction by the Justice Department?
I think any development in the nature of a with Trump appointees, somebody that actually has some sort of a bias or a balanced system on their court, is a good development, because unfortunately a lot of these people have been charged in a highly blue area in Washington, D.C. They have had their rights stripped away from them in many instances, and I don't believe that's how our justice system should operate.
All right, before I get to your full reaction on last night's presidential debate, I want to show you one more clip from what I think really matters. Here we go.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
That is hard to watch. The White House was telling the media Joe Biden had a cold. Conservative commentator Matt Walsh replied, quote, "I hate it when a cold makes me go senile." Your observations of the night?
They had that in their back pocket. They probably would have said he had a cold regardless of how he performed on the debate if anybody raised any issues as to how his vocabulary was slung together. But it was an absolute train wreck. If he's walking around in the White House, he might be president. But if he were walking around on the street outside the White House, he'd be a silver alert. This crosses a line. This becomes elder abuse at some point. When I was watching that, it was very painful to watch. And I think a lot of Republicans did want to celebrate the fact that Trump did very well and that he was obviously better than Joe Biden. But my fear and concern is that now there's not a single Democrat operative out there that is saying that this guy needs to be our nominee. In fact, widespread panic has set in. They're saying it on the air. They're saying it in forms of these clips. Like if I were a social media manager 2 years ago and we were having this debate, even one of those clips would have been played over and over again from left-wing commentators for an entire news cycle. There were so many Democrat commentators last night saying Joe Biden should not be the nominee. It is hard to pick and choose which ones are the best. So I am curious to see what happens over the next few weeks. If they go into a convention process and they replace him somehow, that's going to be very interesting to see who they prop up.
Okay, a lot of people may think your silver alert comment was bad, but take a look at this footage of Jill Biden leading her husband off the stage after the debate. This was after the networks had broken away. His frail condition really showing up again and him trying to negotiate the stairs. Luke, what do you believe the Democrats' next move will be for the 24 election?
Somebody will have to convince Joe Biden, and I believe it will be a conglomerate of the party bosses, people like Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and Barack Obama and everybody within the DCCC, Nancy Pelosi, to come before him and say, for the sake of our party, you must step aside, and then they will nominate somebody else at the convention process. Right now, apparently, Joe Biden is the only one who believes that he is able to go out there and execute the job as president one more time. But if he lets go of that power, if he lets go of that nomination, they will put somebody in there like Gavin Newsom to take the mantle of this nomination. And I believe that is going to create a system in which the Democrats are going to try and basically just take away Joe Biden's power.
Let's go back to the Supreme Court real quick. Another ruling, big news this morning from the court, overturning the Chevron deference. It's a landmark 40-year-old decision that gave federal agencies broad regulatory power, upending their authority to issue regulations unless Congress has spoken clearly. Does this provide companies now a level playing field in court when dealing with the federal government?
It's much better because these unelected bureaucrats should not be making decisions that so directly impact the lives of American citizens that it stifles their ability to have business, to conduct business, to make sure that they actually can put food on the table for their families and work in this free enterprise system. I believe that the bureaucracies that are created in Washington, by and large, are not meant in the Constitution for the American people. They have no place, and there isn't an area in which these people should be overreaching into business and stifling that sort of competition and capitalism.
It seems to me that the court is wanting Congress to do their job. We're not going to rule from the bench. You guys have to pass things, then we'll rule on it. Be sure to keep up with Luke and his observations on issues and the culture. Visit lukeball.org and follow him online at Luke T. Ball. Always great to have you with us, Luke. Thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you, Greg.